Tonight's regional news and weather with Alison Johns follows here in West Country in 15 minutes.
From the studios of ITN, The News with Julia Sommerville.
Hello, welcome to the programme. The headlines tonight. Mandelson tells the Standards watchdog, "I've done nothing wrong." More details of the damage inflicted on Saddam during Operation Desert Fox. And high drama in the skies as China grants Branson a last-minute reprieve. The Trade and Industry Secretary, Peter Mandelson, has spent the day fighting for his reputation. He's been explaining why he secretly borrowed money from the Paymaster General Geoffrey Robinson to buy a house. Tonight, Mr. Mandelson wrote to the Parliamentary Standards watchdog saying he didn't believe the controversial loan needed to be declared. Downing Street again said Mr. Mandelson had the full support of the Prime Minister, but the Conservatives say the whole affair stinks. Here's our political editor, Michael Brunson.
Early this morning, and Peter Mandelson leaves his fashionable and expensive home in the smart part of Notting Hill in West London. Yet when he bought it 2 years ago, he was earning just over £40,000 a year, an MP's salary. And it was only the huge secret loan from Geoffrey Robinson, then also an MP, now also a minister, that made the deal possible. Mr. Robinson is staying silent, Mr. Mandelson is not.
When mud is thrown in my direction, as it has been over this today, I wipe that mud off. I'm not going to allow it to stick, because in my ministerial duties, I play by the book.
To reinforce that, Mr. Mandelson's written to the Commons Watchdog Committee on Sleaze tonight, explaining that because the loan was not a gift or gained by his being an MP, but only by being a friend, he did not register it, though he's now offering to do so. Congratulations, Mr. Mandelson! But that apart, the Tories claim that when Mr. Mandelson became Trade Secretary, the rules say that he should have voluntarily disclosed the loan, rather than simply agreeing later on to have nothing to do with investigating Geoffrey Robinson. Mr. Mandelson disagrees, but the Tory chairman's view is blunt.
I have to say, quite frankly, I believe it stinks. It stinks because of the nature of the loan and the fact that it was kept secret and we don't know the terms of it. It stinks because it does raise questions relating to conflict of interest, and it stinks because it is part of the culture of cronyism, which is so much the hallmark of this government.
A month ago, with MPs on their way to hear a Queen's speech promising radical action like House of Lords reform, many Labour MPs were in buoyant mood. Tonight, many of them are privately and some publicly dismayed.
Peter and all people must know that what matters to the public is how things look. And his argument that £330,000 is nothing between friends, I don't think will necessarily wash in ordinary people.
Today, as Tony Blair, still dealing with the aftermath of the attacks on Iraq, met the German Defence Minister, it was made clear that Peter Mandelson still has the Prime Minister's full backing. So he will not resign, but he has been badly wounded by all this. Michael Brunson, ITN, Westminster.
And Michael Brunson joins me now. Michael, how did such a master of PR and presentation as Mr. Mandelson is fail to see the consequences of what he did, and particularly how the whole thing would look?
Well, that is the question that most Labour MPs, privately and some even publicly, are asking. It is astonishing, I think, to all of us who know this man who was credited so often with being able almost to think what the tabloids were going to think before the tabloids even thought it. And he obviously, in my opinion, decided to take the risk of keeping this loan secret, and he now acknowledges, I believe, that that was a risk he shouldn't have taken, because he's openly saying that with hindsight, he should have done things differently.
Well, presumably this will damage his standing in the party, won't it?
There are very mixed feelings in the party about Peter Mandelson. There always have been. Some see him as a totally Machiavellian, Svengali-like figure. He was meant to go to the DTI as a senior cabinet minister to broaden and enhance his reputation. And I think now he very badly needs some DTI-type success, perhaps with the Millennium Dome, to help really re-establish his reputation.
Mike, thanks very much indeed. More pictures were released today of the extent of the damage Allied airstrikes inflicted on Iraq. The Ministry of Defence said the bombings, including those by RAF Tornadoes, destroyed 3/4 of the sites targeted in Operation Desert Fox. Howell Jones reports.
Saddam Hussein today meeting his closest advisors while the Western allies revealed just how much damage they'd done to the Iraqi war machine. At a briefing in London, the Ministry of Defence said the allies destroyed 3/4 of their targets in Iraq.
Those close to Saddam will realise that we have the ability and the will to target the regime as distinct from the Iraqi people.
These are the grounds of one of Saddam's presidential palaces on a newly released picture. The palace was untouched, but the attack targeted an underground control center. This is a steel mill which makes components for missiles and Iraq's nuclear plants. Officials say repairing the bomb damage will take some time, delaying Iraq's weapons program. And this is the Iraqi Ministry of Industry in Baghdad. The Allies say it's an example of precision bombing in an area where civilians might be at risk.
If you're asking me how many civilian casualties we were expecting, then I think those would be confined to people who were inside military buildings that we were attacking.
What's clear from briefing after briefing here is that officials have not made and will not make any assessment of the number of civilian casualties in Operation Desert Fox. Any such assessment, they say, would simply have to rely on guesswork. Howell Jones, ITN, at the Ministry of Defence.
Princess Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell, cleared his desk today at the office of the charity set up in her memory. He said he was very sad to go after being made redundant from his job as a fundraiser. Nicholas Owen reports.
Paul Burrell arriving this morning for the last day in a job he desperately wanted to keep, a link with his days with Princess Diana, as here visiting Angolan landmine victims with her. He was more than a mere butler, she called him my rock. At high-profile events for the Princess's Memorial Fund, Mr. Burrell's status as her most loyal servant gave him a key role as the best-known fundraiser.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Princess of Wales was a genuine, giving person.
Today, though, outside the London office of the fund, there were all the signs of a desk that had been cleared. The fund doesn't need to raise money actively now, so, as the fund's chief executive Andrew Purkis said in a statement, it is with sorrow and disappointment that I feel I have no other alternative but to issue Paul with a month's notice on the grounds that his job is now redundant. His departure amid emotional farewells comes after revelations that two trustees, including Princess Diana's sister Lady Sarah McCorkadale, used £12,000 of fund money to fly Concorde for a meeting in New York. Mr. Burrell didn't have much to say. Very sad, he said, and a colleague who had also worked for Diana agreed.
I just think it's tragic that he's now no longer with her.
And will you continue working for the fund?
I think that's disgraceful.
Paul Burrell, who joined the Prince and Princess of Wales' staff in 1988, drove off to spend Christmas with his family in Cheshire. Nicholas Owen, ITN.
The European Central Bank has tonight confirmed that its key interest rate will be 3% for those countries joining the single currency when it starts next year. After a meeting in Frankfurt, the bank's president Wim Duesenberg said he expected it to be the rate for the foreseeable future. The actor William Murray, who stars in the ITV police drama The Bill, was today cleared of attacking two heroin addicts he thought were supplying drugs to his 14-year-old daughter. Afterwards, he said his family had been through a nightmare. Shuli Ghosh reports.
Relief for William Murray, better known as Detective Sergeant Don Beach in the police drama The Bill. He was accused of assaulting two addicts he believed were supplying drugs to his daughter. Today he spoke of the end of the nightmare.
This year was a complete... someone hijacked it. It didn't exist. Now all I've got left is 2 days before Christmas to try and get Christmas in... or a Christmas atmosphere in my house.
How's your daughter now, Bill?
My daughter's 5.
The jury heard how Mr. Murray's daughter had written in her diary about taking drugs at the home of one of the alleged victims, Andrew Joyce. The actor had gone looking for her here and at the home of the second man, Brian Basquill, an addict who, the court was told, injected heroin in front of the girl. It was here that Mr. Murray and 3 other men were said to have punched Joyce and Basquill. Today, cleared of all charges, the actor said drugs were a problem all parents should be aware of.
Nobody realises the problems that are in the... I mean, they're in all the schools, even the so-called posh schools. There's a problem there, and we have to deal with it the best way we can.
Mr. Murray says his daughter is now sorting her life out, and the family can at last look forward to Christmas. Shuli Ghosh, ITN, Basildon Crown Court.
Lord Soper, the veteran Labour peer and Methodist campaigner, has died at the age of 95. He was famous for his open-air preaching at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. Harry Smith has been looking back at his life.